Julian Cargoen, former special advisor at the Ministry of Finance, joins us now. Julian, good morning. The Prime Minister returning today. How unusual is it for a Prime Minister to go to the White House, second visit in as many months, and return with nothing that we know of? It's actually unusual, but given the circumstances of the threat we're facing to our economic model is based in large part on selling a lot of stuff to the big neighbor next door. Given the nature of the threat, I think under these circumstances, it's normal to have regular visits. Unfortunately, nothing could be secured on this visit. And maybe that wasn't very surprising, actually. Okay, now we know that Dominic is still there furthering Canada's case. Is it anyone's guess now when or what kind of a deal we will get, especially after him saying last evening that he is optimistic, but optimistic based on what you think? Well, I think if we think about a free trade zone like NAFTA or its successor KSMA as a zone of no tariffs, I don't think it's sensible to be optimistic about going back to that. I don't think there's any going back to that. Canadians are not happy with Mark Carney because he met with Donald Trump and a Carney walked away empty-handed, no clear path forward, as expected. But it's worse than that, though. Donald Trump doubled down on his long-standing goal. He wants to crush Canada's auto sector and bring manufacturing back to the United States entirely. So for Canadian workers, that's not a policy threat. That is a direct hit to jobs. I mean, Trump, a single tweet can affect markets rapidly. So yeah, because whispers of a secret project have surfaced, something Trump has long wanted. A potential revival of the Keystone XL pipeline. But even here, Canada faces massive hurdles. The country's inability to secure its borders and fix major security issues, which means any pipeline negotiation is really fragile. U.S. intelligence agencies already limiting cooperation with Canadian counterparts until Canada gets its own house in order. U.S.-Canada trade tensions. Carney's meeting confirmed what many already suspected: the U.S. holds all the leverage. Surprise there. We all knew that Canada's economic model depends so heavily on selling goods to the big neighbor next door, America. That dependency is now a vulnerability. Unfortunately for Canada, an essential vulnerability right now. Even Trump's predecessors in the White House never pushed back as hard as he has. He's been consistent ever since the 1980s. Any car sold in the U.S. without tariffs must be produced inside the United States. Otherwise, tariffs apply. The problem for Canada is structural. Canadian plants produce American brands: Toyota, Ford, Stellantis. But the U.S. sees those vehicles as American products, not Canadian leverage. Contrast that with the United Kingdom, which negotiates low tariffs by producing UK-exclusive brands. The UK sends cars the US would otherwise not have, and giving them genuine bargaining power. Canada doesn't have that from the very get-go. The country is asking to sell American brands back to America, a position that comes with almost no negotiating room. None. Zilch. And on top of that, Canadian government has already spent nearly $40 billion in incentives to keep foreign automakers in the country. Honda received $5 billion to build an EV battery plant. Stellantis and LG Energy Solutions combined for $15 billion. Volkswagen received $13.2 billion. Ford got $644 million for battery plants. Even Northvolt, which failed, was handed for $2 billion in federal and provincial funding. That's $40 billion for foreign companies to produce products primarily for the U.S. market. And yet, Canada still lacks a domestic brand to give itself real negotiating power. What the freak? It's insane. I don't see a Democratic Party running against the Republicans in a couple of years and 3 years on a free trade ticket. So optimistic that perhaps we can get a deal like the United Kingdom secured, where there's a low base tariff of 10% and some kind of deal on automobiles. But I think one area or two areas where the Trump administration is going to keep digging their heels in. I don't think they're going to relent is on automobiles and on steel. I do think we can get something on aluminum because the Americans don't really make a lot of aluminum. Yeah, I mean, we heard the president yesterday speak of how there is a conflict. The prime minister, of course, correcting him. Not really a conflict, but the two nations compete with each other. Now, this is where tariffs become critical. Trump has been clear he will not allow cars made outside the U.S. to come in tariff-free. That includes medium and heavy-duty trucks. Steel and aluminum are also points of tension. The UK, by contrast, secured a quota system. 100,000 cars at a 10% tariff. Anything beyond that jumps. US has the upper hand because Canada, you've chosen this. You've chosen this. Your auto sector is heavily tied to American brands. Canada has failed, and the power imbalance isn't going anywhere soon. Is it the revival of a pipe dream? The Keystone XL pipeline expansion project canceled twice, may be back on the table. CTV News has learned it was discussed during the Prime Minister's meeting with President Donald Trump at the White House yesterday. But just how serious is Mark Carney in bringing back that shelf proposal? And then there's the Keystone XL pipeline. It leaked reports which suggested could offer some bargaining power, but Canada is far from ready to capitalize. Crossing both countries, the pipeline requires secure borders and trustworthy partners. Two things Canada is not. Security gaps, bureaucratic hurdles, and ongoing corruption make any negotiations tenuous even if the project moves forward. Like, Canada's position is weak, guys. It's dependent on US goodwill and highly on conditional cooperation. Like, the pipeline doesn't change the fundamental imbalance here. Canada is negotiating from a very, very weak position. Security issues, structural trade disadvantages, a dependency on American markets all limit what it can achieve. Until borders are secured, domestic production strengthened, infrastructure built, put in place, oversight enforced, Canada remains vulnerable. It is what it is. The project first proposed over 15 years ago. It's been repeatedly canceled and killed, and then revived and killed. Trump revived it in his first presidency after Obama shut it down. Biden canceled it again. And now it appears ready for another run. Now, many believe it will not survive. Even so, Canada faces structural challenges. The country has to think beyond subsidies and temporary measures. Creating a domestic auto brand could give Canada true negotiating power. That's an idea, isn't it? Like, this isn't about economics. It's about sovereignty. Oh my gosh. I just want quack quack. Carney, you just like wake up, bro. Just unleash all the economic resources that you have under your feet. Create your own car. That's an idea. And then you'll have negotiating power. You can actually do stuff, you know? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great to have a product uniquely Canadian? Just like the UK, for example, giving leverage in trade talks makes sure it's a good car. Obviously, with stronger border security, judicial accountability is good too. Canada, you could finally start negotiating from a position of independence and strength. But let me talk to you about what else the president has said. We know that the president is talking about further tariffs, for example, medium, heavy duty trucks. How do you think that this government can navigate through all of these tariff threats looking forward? Well, it's going to be difficult, because the one thing that President Trump has been consistent on before he was president, going right back to the 80s and since his first term, is that any car sold in the United States without a tariff must be produced in the United States. Any other vehicle coming in is going to face a tariff. So that's going to be very difficult to navigate the entire automotive sector. So we saw that the United Kingdom, a very, very close ally of the United States, was able to secure something called a tariff quota rate, where they have a 100,000 vehicles coming in at a 10% tariff, and then any vehicle after that, any automobile after that, is subject to a 27.5% tariff. Hopefully, right now, failure to act has real consequences. Canadian workers remain vulnerable, trade negotiations stall, and sovereignty is undetermined. Foreign entrepreneurs are exploiting loopholes. Judges are bending rules, and weak enforcement all feed into a perception that Canada isn't serious about protecting its own citizens. Without reform, the US will continue to dictate terms. So here's where you stand. Trump made his priorities clear. Bring auto manufacturing back to the US. Maintain high tariffs on imports and leverage the reserve currency to maximum American advantage. Carney walked away empty-handed. Security gaps, structural weaknesses. It all remains there as a path forward, and Canada must act decisively and strengthen its borders, hold judges accountable, develop domestic manufacturing, and push for energy partnerships that give leverage. The clock is ticking, and Canada's economic model is built around exports to the US. That is at risk. Jobs, trade, sovereignty are on the line. Until these issues are addressed, Canada remains vulnerable. The US knows it. Trump's knows it. Like Canadian public, they feel it.